Hello everyone, we have a poem today that is To the Foot from its Child by Pablo Neruda. About the poet, this has been, as you know, written by Pablo Neruda. He was a Chilean poet, diplomat and a politician. His original name was Neftali Ricardo Reyes Basalto. In the year 1971, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. His writing styles include, he wrote surrealistic poems, historical epics, overtly political manifestos and love poems. Surrealistic poems refer to those sort of poems which have a lot of imagination and related to fantasy and all. So that was his basic writing style. Now we have a pre-reading activity here. The first one is the parts of the human body have many times been metaphorically attributed to various emotions or abstract things. The first is the heart, which is related to emotions as we consider, head to reason, foot, journey of life in a broader perspective, shoulders, responsibility, hand, support, eye speaks of the mirror of the soul. Okay, the next pre-reading activity is, these are some expressions, for example, stand on one's own feet. That means to be independent. To have a brave heart means to be courageous. In cold blood, to be merciless. Take to one's heel means to escape, to run away. Foot and mouth means to do or say something that is embarrassing. Cold feet means to be nervous. These are some expressions that you should know and you can use in your normal conversation. Okay, so we move on to the explanation of the poem. The poet says the child's foot is not yet aware it's a foot and would like to be a butterfly or an apple. Now these lines mean that a child is not yet aware of its responsibilities, so it desires to be independent like a butterfly or like an apple, just be sitting somewhere doing nothing and buzz like an apple. Here the poet has spoken of a foot, a child's foot, as the central idea, but he basically speaks about the life of a normal human being starting from childhood till the end. So when he says the child's foot is not yet aware, he is actually talking about the journey of human beings starting from childhood, that when in the stage of childhood the child is not aware of its responsibilities and would like to lead a life which is independent. Okay, so the next lines are, but in time, stones and bits of glass, streets, ladders, and the paths in the rough earth go on teaching the foot that it cannot fly, cannot be a fruit bulging on the branch. These lines mean that with the passage of time, the hardships of life make the child realize that it can neither fly like a butterfly, nor can it bulge on a branch like an apple. The words in the text, like stones, bits of glass, streets, ladders, they speak about the hardships, the difficulties that a human being has to go through. They are symbolic of the difficulties that a human being has to go through during his life's journey. Okay, the next lines. Then the child's foot is defeated, falls in the battle, is a prisoner condemned to live in a shoe. Meaning, it further feels defeated in the battle of life. It also feels like a prisoner forced to live in a shoe, which metaphorically means society. Now, the child's foot wants to be free, wants to have an independent life, but then it is imprisoned inside a shoe. The same thing can be understood in terms of a child. A child wants to lead a life which is independent, which is free of any shackles. But then time tells it that it cannot lead a life, and it feels defeated because it has the society which has its own way of making the child realize the burdens or the hardships that it has to, the responsibilities that it has to take up slowly. So that is why the child's foot or the child feels defeated. Next, bit by bit, in that dark, it grows to know the world in its own way, out of touch with its fellow, enclosed, feeling out life like a blind man. Gradually, in the darkness, inside the shoe, it gets to know the world independently, feeling out its way like a blind man. So, the foot is inside a shoe now, and inside a shoe it finds nothing but darkness. It cannot even communicate with the fellow foot. So the foot has to lead its life, find its way out like a blind man. Same way, a child leads a life where it finds it completely imprisoned with all the responsibilities, all the things that it has to fulfill. It grows into that, up to that stage then. Another lines. These soft nails of cords, bunched together, grow hard and change themselves into opaque substance, hard as horn, and the tiny petal toes of the child grow bunched and out of trim, take on the form of eyeless reptiles with triangular heads like worms. These lines talk about the transformation the child child goes through, okay? From being soft and innocent to tough and clueless because of the social pressure. So talking about the foot, when it belongs to a child, it's soft, with the nails soft, and when it starts growing further, it becomes opaque. The nails become hard and opaque and hard as horn. And the petal toes, they grow like eyeless reptiles. Here they actually mean the child. The child goes through that transformation. Eyeless reptiles has a reference to the Greek mythology, where these reptiles which are eyeless, they symbolize the cluelessness of human beings, that there's no direction to which they are moving. They don't know, but they have to just go on moving with the flow. That is what the child's position is, or the situation is, that the child, from that innocence, it moves towards being a tough human being and battling through life, sometimes not even knowing the exact direction where life is going to lead him to. So that is how the things move in a human being's life. The next lines. Later they grow calloused and are covered with the faint volcanoes of death, a coarsening hard to accept. These lines mean, later, as the young foot grows older, the child's foot, as it grows older into an adult's foot, it grows hard and rough and is covered with scars of injuries which occurred. Now, faint volcanoes of death actually speaks about the injuries or the scars that are present on the foot because of the struggle to survive that the foot has to go through or the child has to go through in this world, and which is again a change which cannot be avoided, which is inevitable, which cannot be avoided, but at the same time, that change is hard to accept. So, the child's foot from being soft petal turns calloused, turns rough and hard, and has all the scars of the struggle, and finally, that change is difficult to accept for the child. But this blind thing walks without respite, never stopping, for hour after hour, the one foot, the other, now the man's, now the woman's. So these lines mean the poet is speaking about the foot inside the shoe as a blind thing. But this blind thing walks is the foot inside the shoe as a blind thing. The poet refers to the child which has turned into an adult who keeps moving without any respite, without any rest, whether irrespective of the fact that it belongs to a man or a woman, but human beings in general, they keep on moving tirelessly without any rest, and that is what fate has for them. Up above, down below, through fields, mines, markets, and ministries, backwards, far afield, inward, forward, this foot toils in its shoe, scarcely taking time to bear itself in love or sleep. It walks, they walk, until the whole man chooses to stop. These lines have a deeper meaning. They say that the poet here says that the foot keeps moving to various different places. When he speaks about the fields, mines, markets, ministries, backwards, inward, forward, he's talking about the various places that the human beings have to keep on moving to, and it is just to fulfill the responsibilities endowed upon them, the responsibilities that they have shouldered, and they have to fulfill them without taking any time out to love or rest, without having any time for themselves. Only the things that they need to accomplish is the basic motto or the focus of their lives. And this, the grind keeps on moving till it breathes its last, till the human being reaches its last. And then it descended underground, unaware, for there everything was dark. So these lines further say the poet speaks about death by pointing out how the foot spent its entire life in darkness. We were talking about the foot inside the shoe where it finds darkness. It moves around like a blind man. The foot doesn't know, even after its death, that it is no more alive, because it again descends into darkness. It goes back to darkness. It has spent its life in darkness. After death too, it goes into darkness. So there is hardly any difference for the foot. It doesn't know that. It is unaware of this fact. Furthermore, it never knew it had ceased to be a foot, or if they were burying it so that it could fly, or so that it could become an apple. Now, the foot, again, after breathing its last, it doesn't even realize, because as I told you in the further explanation, that the child's foot has to pass the whole lifetime in darkness. After death too, it descends into darkness. It doesn't realize that it is no more a foot. It doesn't realize what or where has life taken it actually. So that is the condition of normal human being, that we are so embroiled into our daily activities or everything, that we forget from where we started and where we came to an end. So here there's a realization that the poet speaks about. He says that he states that the foot realizes only after its death that it led a mechanical life. Had it known the fact that it was living such a life, it would have led it on its own terms. It would have continued with the dream of either being a butterfly or an apple, as the child's foot dreamt of. But later on, it was made to realize that there are responsibilities and it has to shoulder them and take them up. So here, in the end, the poet puts up this thought-provoking note, ends it on a thought-provoking note, making us think about it, that even after the death, the foot doesn't know where it is. So it would have actually loved to lead a life which would have been on its own terms than to lead such a mechanical one. So that is all that the poet means to say in this poem, To the Foot from its Child, speaking of a child's journey from childhood, a human being's journey from childhood till the end of his life. He has portrayed it beautifully by speaking of the foot and clearly bringing out the life of a normal human being in front of us. Okay, thank you.